I think that's a real thing that a lot of people need to see, that like everybody they look up to, everybody, and you have a lot of young men looking up to you and older men.
It's interesting.
Is that, oh, bro, if you didn't know that already, like,
it's interesting.
like you do, I mean, like you can look at a lot of the pictures and stuff like that of how young men look up to you and will continue to come on a Wednesday night just because you're gonna be there.
Yeah,
it's same thing that my son had with like Carlos at one time. When my son met Carlos, he was coming to youth nights because Carlos is gonna be there, and then it was Key, and so these kids are looking up to you to be like, all right, how polished do I have to be?
Yep.
Is God gonna accept me like this, hair, like lifestyle, everything this way, or do I have to like clean up and then come in here?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's cool to meet people where they're at to say, bro, I was just, you see that as a mess, but that was my life.
Right.
The biggest thing is knowing that he has no plan on keeping you that way.
Yep.
He has no plan.
Yep.
It ain't my timeline.
Yep.
I ain't sitting here trying to like pray that away.
Yep.
He's planning on transforming you, and it's going to be in his time. So I think it's powerful what God is doing through your life and other youth directors that kids are looking up to. Like, dang, if he could do it, if he could walk through that, if he's seen that, then like why I keep discrediting myself, or why do I keep thinking that God, I'm not good enough for God because of what I'm going through?
A lot of kids, I can tell that, I mean, outside of looking up, like I know me as a teenager definitely was like trying to figure out identity, trying to figure out like how to be cool, but like, you know what I'm saying? Because I was an athlete, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's part of it, you know, where you kind of have this stereotypical, like this is how you have to operate type of thing, versus you actually like just being who you are and being accepted to be who you actually are. I think that's interesting. I think a lot of teenagers deal with that. So
for sure. I think it's fair to say that they're all seeking after an identity to understand who they are, and 100%. A lot of them find their identity in what they do. Yep. Like I'm a football player. I'm a basketball player.
Yep.
And this is my like you got enough people out here saying, don't ever make a plan B. Always have a plan A. Well, my only plan A is basketball, bro.
100%.
And so, like, if that don't work out, I don't know who I am.
Yep.
Like, I don't know who I am.
Yeah, because you then face an injury, or you face something that happens, and then you see all of these kids go through, like, depression because they're like, I can't play sports no more. I can't do this.
This is who I am.
And you know what I'm saying? I don't get the girls no more because they like, I don't even see you on the field, and they cracking jokes. So it's like a lot of that definitely 100% happens.
Sure.
Yeah.
I
don't know if we're in the show already.
I mean, don't worry. I can use all of this. No. Hey, welcome to God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. I'm excited you're here. And if you're listening for the first time, or you're back for another great episode, I want to thank you for joining us. I want to start by letting you know that your story and what you may be going through, they matter, and you're not alone. So try not to worry about what chapter you're in, because if you trust God with your story, he's going to breathe life back into it. So sit back with the community that cares about you and hopes that you feel God's love as well as see God's glory in Men's Real Stories. So before we get started, do me a quick favor. Go ahead. You know what I'm going to ask. Click that thumbs up real quick. You'll be glad you did. Then, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, trust me, it's free of charge. You won't get any charges. It won't cost you a thing. So go ahead and click it now. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, thank you all for your support. Know that this podcast is nothing without the men who God has put it on their heart to say yes to joining me. Like today's special guest, who I had the pleasure to meet after he encouraged one of the young men I walk with in our weekly e-groups in one of the most unusual ways, and what may have felt like a fumble to him became a message of resilience to others. So I'm excited to sit down and hear his story today. So I would like to welcome our brother, Tyrese Edwards, to the episode. What's going on, bro?
What's up? Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. It's an honor to be able to sit down with another brother who's doing something in the area that I'm doing, which is what I consider it like discipleship. I am walking with other young men and older men to allow them to experience God in their own way. And so it's always a pleasure to sit down with another brother who's doing something in the same arena and has a desire and a passion for what God wants to do through him. So it's a pleasure, man. Like, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and start off by letting you introduce yourself for those who are like, okay, well, who is this guy and where does he come from? Who is Tyrece Edwards?
Well, first off, beyond anything, I'm a child of God. So I'm God's son. And then I'm the husband to my wife, Martia, who I love. We're going to hit 5 years in November.
Nice. Congrats.
So super, super excited about that. And through that love, we have created 3 little babies.
Nice.
So I got 3 sons. Thank you, God, for blessing me with 3 sons. A daughter, I don't even know what would happen. And but I got 3 sons, Jackson, Jace, and Jaden. So they are 4, 2, and I think getting ready to be 6 months or 7 months. So man.
Yeah, those months are a hard one to call.
I know, it's just
they go by so fast.
They go by so fast. You don't know where it's at. And then my day job is I serve as the youth director at Elevation University City. So I oversee all of our middle school and high school students there.
Nice. Man. Very cool. And I think that's truly an honor that God would use you in that way, because I think that I think about just having a small E group and I'm like, man, that's enough. You're overseeing hundreds of kids and not only overseeing them, but their parents are entrusting you 100%. with what their children get out of it. Is not just like I'm going to drop them off. And I'm sure that may be the case for some people. Like, I'm going to drop them off just so I can get some free time. But like, you have more plans than just to be like a babysitter for these kids and watch over. You plan to put a foundation in a lot of these kids. And so has that always been like, or I can't say has that always been, I would say, was that even on your radar? Was that a desire of yours initially?
No. It wasn't. I've been working with teenagers for a while at this point. But that was not a desire. Ministry was not a desire. It wasn't something that I was even thinking about. So prior to working at Elevation, I was working for an organization within the city that was working with students. And in that organization, first off, I love what we got a chance to do. And I think ultimately for me, I was in kind of like in between a rock and a hard place. Within that organization, I was getting paid okay, but not great. And we were getting ready to have another baby. So at the end of the day, I'm like, we got to figure out how to provide for our kids. We already had one, and then we getting ready to welcome another one. So for me, it was like, all right, well, what am I going to do with that? So I was like, well, I think what's best is switching career fields. So I actually was starting to code. So I was teaching myself how to code. So I was coming home at night, put my boy down, and then I was like staying up, in the middle of the night, teaching myself how to code because I was going to be a software engineer, get into, some tech company or something like that, and hopefully make 6 figures. That's the right. I can dig it. Yeah. Whatever the American dream is, that's what I was trying to accomplish. But really, it was a means to an end of like, I'm just trying to get some more money so that I can provide for this family that is growing. Right. Was ultimately the thing. And I sat in an e-group, men's e-group, just so happened to be our pastor, Pastor Chet. And it was one of those things that we developed a relationship, which was it was cool and it was organic. And they had a role open, and he was like, hey, like, is this something that you would be interested in? And at first I'm like, I don't know about working for no church. Like, this is not, what I'm saying? I'm just a youngin' from around the way. So I'm not sure exactly if this is really for me. Right. And really, I just, at that point, it was a couple things that really lined up that made it seem like, oh, this might be something that's really like a God thing. Outside of, increase in financials, it really was a thing that I was like, okay, I've been working with teenagers for, at that point, probably the past 7 years. So teenagers, I coached basketball. I was working at a school. I also worked in a field. My background is in psychology. So I work with, kids that you struggle with ADHD, ADD, ODD. So I've been just working with, teens for a little while at that point. Gotcha. So then it was like, okay, well, I love teenagers, love working with them, seeing them grow. like I love Jesus at the end of the day. So I was like, my faith is a big part of that. And the other thing that was really, I think pivotal for me was actually being able to like grow in my leadership. I thought that was another like kind of wing of that I was like, oh, I want to be able to do something where I get to grow in leading people. And this role just felt really, really good. It kind of checked all the boxes of like, I get to do leadership, work with teenagers, and like come from a biblical centric like framework. Yeah, that's a win-win-win, for
right,
me. So
right,
I was
right.
like, yeah, there was no turning back from
right.
that.
Okay, so wait. So what happened to the coding, bro? I mean, like because it's funny. I talk to a lot of people who always like, bro, IT is where the money's at, bro. Like you want to get 6 figures, like you jump in. So like I was right there with you, like yeah, that coding would have got you there. But like so was that your plan? Do you feel like that was just like a knee-jerk reaction to the fact of like my family's growing? I got to do something right now, and I've been there before. Like I remember that moment where like I went from 1 kid to 2 kids, and it was almost like somebody was like, "Oh, bro, you better run now. If you was
100%.
walking, it's time to run." And so like I'm sitting there like, all right, like what am I doing now? Can I do more of that? And so was that just something that you just kind of like put to the back burner to where you were like, this was my plan, maybe not God's plan for me?
I read a stat that said each kid like that you have is will cost you about $300,000 to raise a kid in America. So I was like, I got $300,000 at the house right now, and another 3 on the way.
right. And you know what? I think it's fair to say that's average.
That's average.
I'm pretty sure my son has run up a bill of about 500,000. I'm certain of it. Like that's the average kid. And then I got my kids who are like, nah, I need the top tier. Like I need top shelf. Like yeah. 100%. So there's that.
So I know that's average, right? But that was the lens that I'm looking through. I'm like, okay, I ain't nowhere near that at this point. So I'm like, how do we make sure that we do that? So coding is something that I ended up putting on the back burner because I do think it was my plan. It was like, okay, I liked it. Like while I was doing it, I felt like, okay, it's hard. Like to self-teach and not have like an instructor, and you really are just kind of like going through video after video and trying to figure it out. Right. Like it's hard. I was starting to catch it a little bit, but I think ultimately I was like, okay, do I really want to sit behind a computer,
for sure,
and for hours at a time, and go through these things and test this and test that and not really have like people interactions. Right. I'm like, I don't know if that's really what I want to do, and kind of it's worked its way out of my life. Like I don't have a desire to go back to code.
He stripped that
like nothing
that
in me, like nothing in me at this point was like, oh, you like coding was actually one of those things. Like there's nothing about coding at this point that I'm like, yeah, I can see myself going back and doing that. Nope. Give me people all day long, and and I'm good.
That what's crazy though? Like right before we were chopping it up about how like sometimes there's a plan A, and if you make a plan B, then it means you already doubt the plan A. Yep. But I think it's really interesting how like sometimes God will give us a plan B that was always supposed to be the plan A. Correct. And he will take the taste of your initial plan A completely out of your mouth to where it's like, bro, I don't even know what I was thinking about. Like that was like, I was set on that. But now like God is just kind of like pivot, and here we are, like completely so far away from what I initially thought was my life plan, because I was chasing after one thing when sheesh.
Yep.
I was chasing after one thing when he needed me chasing after him.
100%.
Man.
Because if you get into, let's just say you get into coding, I take the path, I get into coding. I mean, I'm not chasing after him. I'm chasing after this check. I'm like, we trying to provide for the family. That is like the main mission, right? Yeah. Now, there could be some enjoyment that happens in there. I might learn how to code and it feels good and stuff like that. But there's not necessarily purpose that's connected to it. Yeah. So it's the main thing is, no, I want more money. Yeah. So if that's the thing, then I'm running to that. And then what's really dangerous is that Now, if that's not providing what I need for whatever lifestyle I'm trying to create, now you're talking about, okay, then what's the next thing that you run into that is a money maker?
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you build your life on that, now you start to really just, that is the only influence. So as much as I can say I love Jesus at that point, it's like, if I'm not pursuing him in all things,
come on,
then there's really no reason. Like, I will constantly jump from thing to thing to thing because I'm trying to fulfill, that part. So I think what he did was really protect me in that situation where it was like, hey, you are about to go down a path that is going to lead you to you don't know where, but I really want you to get on this path because it's going to lead you to me. And the more and more and more that you can like just surrender to that, I think you're going to be in a much better place. And on the other side of that, the thing that you're probably wanting is for me to be your provider and to provide for you.
Come on.
You already, like, you're going to have that too. So it's like, I'm like, I don't know if this ministry thing really going to be the thing. But then he also like, I heard it said this way, your only is God's saying that, no, that's enough. So you might sit here and say like, oh man, like I'm only gonna have this much, or I'm only gonna do this. But God is like, no, that's enough.
Yeah,
I can use that.
Yeah,
that's all I need.
Yeah.
And I think that was helpful. Like, that's helpful for me to be able to recognize and realize that it's like, yeah, I'm only doing ministry, I'm only gonna make this much. And it's like, no, it's not even about that. It's like, it's enough for what he needs to do, and he's gonna constantly provide in that, in that space. So I think I appreciate it now, even while I'm sitting here talking. I'm like, I appreciate God's protection in that space, because, Lord knows 2 years ago what I would be doing if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Sheesh, bro. Oh my goodness, man, you said so much there. And literally, even when you ended it with like, I appreciate God's protection. And I recognize that two of the things you mentioned that we are called to do, which is to provide and protect, you realize that you were just a small piece of that, and that he was a true provider and protector. 100%. And I think so many of us never get to that point. We stay stuck in the identity, if nothing else, of I'm called to be a provider and protector.
Yep.
And I'm so like, I don't think that point can ever not be addressed enough here, because I recognize that is just something you constantly hear. You're a provider and protector. So what are you doing to provide? How are you protecting? Yeah. And so when it's left up to you, you agree to that, it's almost like you're saying, yeah, God, this is what I'm called to do. Yeah. And I think I can do it better than you. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the job that you were called to do. Yeah. But yet I feel like people have put that on me.
100%. And I mean, I feel like we do that all the time. Like, society just is going to put that on you, right? That is your box as a man, you a husband, provide, protect. And I think that there's a part that you play in it, but ultimately God is going to have the last say so on where that is actually going to be placed, because he doesn't, I don't believe, want your identity to be wrapped up in provide and protect. He wants your identity to match up to him ultimately, and he will do the provision. He will give it to you. He's going to give you the provision. He's going to be your protector, right? Now, there's a part that I believe that men play in that, in their household. But ultimately, it's the thing that God is going to fuel. He's going to be the one that's going to give you the strength to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the part that I feel like society will put, and men will wrap their identity into that being their only thing. Because then what if that is stripped away from you? Right?
Come on.
What if you don't, what if you lose the job and you are no longer the breadwinner or the provider?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What if you lose the ability to feel like you can protect in the way that you want to? What if you get into a car accident and now you're not physically able to protect the way that you feel like you would want to?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you still a provider or a protector?
Yeah. No.
What's the root of it, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting.
Yeah. And I think even to go further, that when you can't do those things, where does that put you? Where does that place your mind? What does that do with the identity that you've taken on that now you can't live up to? Those are those are conversations I believe that aren't addressed enough, because we talk about young kids, we talk about the youth, we talk about the identities they place on themselves, the identities they begin to build in their mind as they look and they say, okay, I want a lot of money.
Yep.
I want to have this, I want to have that. So what will get me there the quickest? We're in a society now where like, I want it as fast as the microwave dinner will be able to provide it to me, right?
That's a fact. Yeah.
And so like most of the time there is not a desire to get it the slow way, through a slow process. I want to go the fastest process. Yeah. And so I think it's fair to say we lose a lot of youth to the fast process of life. They're looking at what is shiny, what's right in front of their eyes, what's attractive. And so how do you feel God has prepared you to speak to that and a lot of the youth that come through your doors and feel like they've already kind of got it figured out? They just need this Bible thing just to back up what they're doing.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. Because I don't think that it just stops with being a youth. Like I think adults, people in general, struggle with the fact of like their identity is wrapped up in something. Facts. And you talk about kind of like the fast life, like everybody is looking to figure out like, okay, how do I get here faster? Like, how do I do this? How do I accomplish this? I feel behind in this. Like, I think that's a human nature thing. I think it's a lie of the enemy to just say like, you start to look at other people and you start to compare your life. I think the world that we live in right now, because of the accessibility that you can see everything that's happening in the world, that it creates and like how our world operates literally in all things, we are almost programmed to live a faster life. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Food is fast.
Yeah.
Right? If I need to find something, I can just Google it. It's fast.
Yeah.
Right. If I go on Instagram, I'm going to like scroll and I'm going to see something that's funny. I'm going to see something that's sad. I'm going to see something that like, it's literally a rush of emotions that happen fast. Like there's not a lot of time where you really get to sit. Like it's interesting because I believe the best things take time. Like, and that's not a super profound statement, but when I think about it, I'm like, man, when I think about Thanksgiving and how long like my family cooks for Thanksgiving, and how the house smells at that point, I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to eat this. And everything just feels like it tastes so much better. It's why it's almost like you feel like you get full, like, and you have to go into a sleep because maybe it's some of the food that you eat. And you know what I'm saying? Black people, we be cooking all kinds of food, right?
Come on now.
But then I think on the other side of it, I'm like, no, it's like the food really took time. Like somebody really took their like hard-earned time of like, oh, I need to prepare this meal. Yeah. I'm preparing it for maybe multiple people. So like, I really got to make sure that every piece of the turkey is good.
Yeah.
That every piece of this salmon is gonna be fire. That every piece of this dressing is gonna taste good. Right? Not just part of it. I can't just throw some stuff together. I really gotta jump into it. So I just think that part of it is like, when I think about teenagers, I'm like, it is not just them, but if we're talking specifically to them, I'm like, yeah, you have to figure out how do you slow your life down. When I think about like basketball players, my favorite basketball player is LeBron, and I think he always mentions that. Just did like a podcast recently, but he mentioned that when like the clock is ticking down, that even though things could be moving fast around him, that things actually slow down for him. And I'm like, well, we could probably argue that he is one of the greatest basketball players of all time.
For sure.
Why wouldn't his mind speed up in those moments?
For sure.
Why would, if he is so great, the attribute of greatness is slowing down. It is the slow process of saying, okay, like everything slows down, everything feels slower, and I'm able to actually pick my spots of what I'm going to do. Maybe not even predetermined. And I think that that's probably, when I think about teenagers, it's like you have to give them tools of how they slow their life down so that they can see the bigger picture, because everybody's just going to see the thing that's in front of them. But it's like, okay, how do I get teenagers to be able to zoom out and be like, you're 13. The boy that you like right now that you was talking to, yeah, you got 30 years to, like, it's not that deep. Y'all been talking for 5 minutes. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
How do you zoom out enough to be like, yeah, he didn't text you back. Maybe because he's busy.
Right.
Maybe because, like, can you zoom out just a little bit to be able to see, like, a bigger picture versus the thing that you are just so flustered about that's right in front of you?
Yeah.
And I think I feel like that's the task that I feel when I think about teenagers. It's like, yeah, how do I get you to slow down? And everything is not like I have to be so reactionary, but it's like I can slow down enough to see bigger perspective on whatever the thing is in front of me.
Yeah.
And I think when you constantly work that muscle, then your life starts to feel that way. So everything doesn't feel like it's an emergency. There's emergencies that happen.
Facts.
But everything doesn't have to feel like it's an emergency.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And that as you explain that, I'm sitting here thinking about how, like, normally most people are used to the knee-jerk reaction of, like, this is on the table, what are you gonna do? And it's almost like the urgency of how people come to us with those things, it's expecting a response of urgency from us.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, well, like you're talking fast, you seem to have brought it with me with urgency, so, like, I have to match your urgency instead of saying, you know what, let me think about that. And normally I would quickly go with something, but I've recognized that my quick answer is normally the answer that has caused me to have to go back again and try it again, or go back again and look at it, because you were expecting something fast. And I really don't even know so I guess my question would be, how do you address that with teens who are in a fast, I mean, we always talk about how, like, I remember back in my time, it was like, yeah, it's a fast-paced world. So what are we in now that it's a lot faster? I mean, we got ChatGPT that will spit out a project for you in a few seconds. We have, I mean, everything is getting faster now.
Yeah.
I just wonder, how do you address those things even in your own life?
Yeah.
To slow things down when you're in the fast-paced world of being a father to not only 3 young boys, but you're also called upon to be a father figure to a ton of other boys.
Yeah. That's a great question. And I'm slowing myself down so that we can have a I think ultimately, man, it's because I think the thing that I think about more is probably values. It's probably, like, vision, big picture things. It's probably the thing that I try to operate out of more versus the like task that happens. So for an example, I would say, like, for my boys, it is easy to just throw them down and let them just go to bed and go to sleep. Like, hey, get in the room, y'all go to bed, good night. It's easy to do that when you're like, oh, I just worked, I just came off of a long night, I got to get up early, right? It's easy to just say, like, oh, I need to do that. But the value that I feel is, one, that I want to read to my boys every night. I want them to hear, like, and listen to a book. I want them to engage with that, right? So if that's the value that I have, then for me, I'm like, I'm going to slow down enough that we're going to read every night. Now, there's moments where I'm kind of on my fast pace. But the beautiful thing about when you're raising kids is that they learn. And there's moments that I'm in my fast pace where I'm like, hey, y'all just need to go to bed. And then my son is like, hey, daddy, we need to read a book.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And now it's instilled in him that every night a book is read. He either picks it out, I pick it out, his brother picks it out, but something happens there. And I think for teenagers, it's trying to get them to start to see values versus seeing the thing that's just in front of them, the text message. No. Okay, do you see yourself as worthy Do you see yourself as valuable? Do you see yourself as responsible? And starting to think through, like, how do I instill values and principles in their lives so that they're operating in their brain and starting to work off of that more than just I'm just so task oriented. I think that's the part when I think about leadership in my life and the people that I've been around. I think that's the thing that's been extremely helpful for me, is to get out of the task, get out of the weeds, and start to see big picture and lead from that place. And when you start to lead from that place, then you're like, oh, things don't feel emergent. It feels like, no, we can handle that. Hey, this is kind of teetering a little bit off of like where we feel like is our core value. Hey, we need to figure out how do we get this back online, but it's not emergent. Right.
Yeah.
And then you can handle emergencies because you created space and room. So I think for teenagers, for me, it's like, all right, how do I start to get them to understand like big picture values, right? Who does God say that you are? How do you see yourself in that way? And start to wrestle with those thoughts. I think it's the way that I'm like, that's helpful for a teenager to be able to see.
Yeah.
Because that will then slow them down.
Yeah.
So that it's not, I have to knee jerk to every last thing that happens,
That's
or
good.
somebody that knocks me off, or somebody that's talking about me at school. It's like, okay, they're talking about me at school, but is that person honest?
Yeah.
Do they have integrity?
Right.
And if I'm getting a teenager to understand honesty and integrity, then it's like, oh, they don't do what they say they're going to do when they say they're supposed to do it. They don't have integrity. They don't do the right thing when nobody's looking.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have to respond to every little thing that they do because I know that they don't align with the value that I feel like I hold close. And I think that's the part where I'm like, oh, well, I think teenagers would be able to slow themselves down more if they start to like look big picture and be able to have some different perspectives in that way.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it's funny because as you were talking, I thought about how like you were talking about basketball earlier and how LeBron was like one of your favorite players. And I kept thinking that you were saying that like as teens, they need to learn how to create space between the tasks. And I was thinking about how in basketball, think about like trying to shoot over a defender. You can just shoot it and there's a chance that you may get blocked.
Yep.
But there's a pivot where you can create space between that defender and your goal, your end goal of a successful shot.
Excellent.
And I as you were talking about that, I'm like, man, that's crazy that like most people say I would much rather have space between me and that defender than to just go up and just shoot up a shot with the possibility of that person possibly blocking me.
Yep.
And I think when people realize that you have permission to put space between you and that task, I think it allows people to breathe before they even respond. Of like, okay, so I have permission. Like, so you're telling me I don't have to be as like urgent as you're coming to me with this. I can like I have permission to like breathe and stop and analyze it for a second. I think when you give yourself that permission, even if it's not given to you, it creates the space that people are looking for to say, yeah, I needed that space instead of, so no, I saw that as you were talking and I'm like, yo, that's so good of how like he was talking about basketball previously and how like, think about it, LeBron, one of his biggest moves is in creating space. Like even if he's fading back, his prime ability is to create space and then execute. Yeah. And so I couldn't unsee that. When as you were talking, I'm like, man, that's good. So when it comes to like your own life, like, and this is your personal life, before you pour into kids, or teens, what is one of the ways that you pour into yourself, or you take time to pour into yourself so that you can pour from a I guess I'm thinking about like a pitcher, and like a lot of times pitchers are rather large. And if you put a lot of liquid into a pitcher, especially when you're pouring a lot of glasses, you need to be able to have the strength to be able to carry that pitcher and pour it. Yeah. So what are you doing for yourself to pour into so many cups of others, whether it be teenagers or whether it be staff that maybe don't feel equipped to to do what God has put on your heart, that you like you see something in them, but yet you have to be able to pour from your cup into them.
Yeah. I mean, I think a couple practical things for me is, I mean, me and my wife, we talked about this probably about a year ago. I would say at least a year ago. And it was for me prioritizing self-care and what does that actually look like for me? And for me, it's playing basketball on Saturday mornings. So it's a 6 a.m. run that I go to on Saturday mornings, and I go play basketball. Now what's helpful for me is that it's on our calendar. So every Saturday, like we know that is a thing that's happening, unless we're out of town and things like that come up. But that's a space for me where I can be extremely intentional, because one, I think it creates a great spot for me, because 6 a.m, kids still sleep, wife still sleep. You know what I'm saying? I can get up, get there, come back, and they're maybe just waking up, or, you know, just in their early phase of you know, their morning. So that's helpful. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But then the other side of it is like, now I can be intentional on my drive there, on my drive back, the conversations that I have while I'm at the gym with, you know, some friends and some of my guys. A lot of times, like, there's moments that I listen to music on the way there. There's moments that I don't, and I'm just thinking, or I'm praying, having some intentional time with God. It's me creating the space. And most of the time I try to call my dad, you know, on my ride back, and I tell him how I played and stuff like that. And then we just chop it up and have, you know, whatever conversations kind of come out of that. That is a practical way that I refuel. It helps me. Saturday is right before Sunday, so getting into the next day, knowing that we'll have church, I'm like, I had some intentional time where it was just space for me, that I didn't have to worry about, other things. And basketball is just one of those things for me.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And then just another part is, I started journaling at the top of this year. Our words for this year, we had 3 words. It's remember, praise, and trust. Are our 3 words. Remember is being able to look back in the past and remember. So the past could be whatever. It can be this past day. It can be something that was years ago, but really taking some intentional time to remember something from there. Because I feel like I have a hard time remembering things that happen. So because sometimes we're in our fast pace, right? We don't slow down enough to take the time. So I think that was one thing that I feel like I've done, is that. And then praise is like really just gratitude. It's, really thanking God for what has he blessed me with. What are some things that I'm extremely grateful for, from today or just in general. So it's something that I try to prompt myself to write. And then trust. And trust is a hard one for me because I'm not necessarily a dreamer, right? So I don't necessarily look and see so many things in the future. And I think for me, trust is it forces me to say okay, God, what am I believing you for? What am I trusting that you are going to do? And having that as a practice for me has been helpful, to just have a prompt that I do. I can't say I do it every day, but I try to do it as often as possible to say okay, let me go through these prompts. Let me force myself to have to think this way. And then there's just days where I'm just it's not the prompts that I'm looking at. It's just, I'm just writing some things down. And I think it's extremely helpful for me because it creates space where I'm I can slow myself down, get into pen and paper, where it's not, I got to be on my phone. A text message comes through and all of those type of things. It's nope, shut all of that down. Let me stay into, I'm just writing. I'm writing. And then your mind starts to go in all kinds of places. And I think it's extremely helpful for me. Cause then it's I'm writing. All right, hold on. Let me break out my Bible. Let me start looking at okay, now sure. Let me get my study Bible. Let me start looking at the foot. And then it starts going down this entire rabbit trail. And now I got 15 books that's sitting there open, trying to dig into something. And I just think that's the part that's been extremely helpful for me, is personally creating some of that space. And then I would just say man, I'm blessed to have, amazing people that's in my life, that pour into me, that challenge me. So I think that has been helpful too.
Yeah.
To have people that are just intentional with the way that they pour in. So I think that is helpful when I'm thinking about leadership. I'm leading people, I'm doing the things, but being able to have people in place is also extremely needed, to be able to not be pouring from empty, but you're pouring from a place. Like you're constantly being fed something, whether it's something that you're doing or whether it's something that somebody else is, sharing with you.
No, that's good, man. I'm not gonna lie, that journal entry thing, bro. I can already see people still in that. Like, I know that's not my word of the year, but like, I like that 3 because you literally you gave yourself prompts on what you're going to write about. So you're not just, and don't get me wrong, some of us can go to a journal and I'm just gonna verbally vomit all of it on the paper or whatever is in my mind. Yeah. But for some of us who don't know how to where to even start, prompts give you that starting point of like, hey, look, what am I trusting God for? What am I believing for? What am I the remembering part I thought was really good, because a lot of times we looking at our past as a negative thing. Yep. But I also see the benefit in saying, okay, I'm looking back in my past to remember what God has done, so that I can trust him now in the future of what he's going to do. And so, the past is not always a negative place to sit. Sometimes the past is also a great place to sit, to remember what God has done, to remember what you've walked through. Like, you can look back and be like, man, I've come this far. That's crazy. Yeah. And so, no, I loved all of those, because I'm like, man, that I could see somebody literally creating a journal right now to be like, he just gave me his idea. I'm going to create a journal with those. Like literally, I see it happening right now. Yeah. Somebody's going to be like,
don't steal that. I'm about to.
It's all yours. You got a little bit of time. Yeah. So by the time this releases, I'm pretty sure he's going to have a journal out so that you guys can just. And so now that you've listened to this episode, go and check out Ty's journal. It's available in all bookstores. It has funny. All the prompts. But no, I think that's so good. I think that's so important. I can't say enough about journaling. I've had so many people that just surprise me when they sit down here and they're like, yeah, I journal. And I've seen the benefit of how that has helped my life. Taking that time out to like spend time with my community. And so, you got to speak to like community though. Mm-hmm. What is that like in choosing the community you spend time with? Because you spoke about how like you have people that are intentional about pouring into you. Yeah. For people who are trying to find their community, for people who are trying to find their people, the people they want to grow with, like they recognize, I have been in the same place with the same stuff, doing the same thing with the same people around me for a long time. Yep. Is this ever going to change, or am I going to be stuck right here 20 years from now, making the same amount, doing the same thing, and my growth is stagnant? What would you say to them about finding their community of people that either God is trying to place in their life, or they're just like, bro, but I know these guys. This is safe. I know what I get here. Yeah. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think having a community is vital. I think it's really, really important. And I mean vital like life and death. I think that it is extremely important to have community. And I think you have to choose the right people. And I think you have to try people out. Like you have to figure out like, okay, I've been a part of several different e-groups, and there's some e-groups that I'm like, I really, really vibe with them. There's some e-groups that's like, they were great for a season. And then there's others that's like, no, I can see lifelong friends that come out of this, right? And I think you have to be intentional with the way that you do it, but you also just have to, you have to step out on faith. You have to like actually like show up to the thing. Like you have to actually like go and do it. Like don't just sign up for something, like actually show up. And I think you have to, there's a level that I think you have to be vulnerable and you have to be open. And sometimes there's some internal work that has to happen there. I think, therapy is extremely important for you to start to work through some of the fears that you might have, some of the trust issues that you could potentially have when it comes to meeting new people and bringing people into your world, into your life. And I think that that's important. Like you need to do some of that work too, because you also don't want to get into a relationship with people and now you you're trauma dumping and all of those type of things.
Yeah.
Some of that happens.
Yeah,
but I
sure.
think community helps you because there's a couple different ways I believe it helps. I think getting in community with people that may be in the same like phase of life, I think is helpful for you because you have somebody that you can go to and you can like talk about things that you're struggling with, and you have some commonality there. So I think commonality is one of the things that I think is extremely helpful.
That's good.
I think having some community that is older and a little bit more experienced than you is also something that is vital because you want to be around people that have lived life already before you to give you some wisdom and some game. I think it's important for that to be part of your community of people. Like you need that. It's people that are able to help you not run into certain things and to avoid certain things. And I think you need to have people like that in place. That, have a little bit of life experience, some wisdom on things. They're able to pour from a different place. They have a different vantage point than you do. And then I think there's a level that you should always be thinking of, is what God is doing in your life just for you, or is it for somebody else that you should pour into?
On now.
And I think that you should always think about, when it comes to community, like, okay, who can I link with that I'm able to start to pour into intentionally? Who am I discipling? And I'm not saying that everybody has to be your, like, you need to rush and do that. I think there should be a real process that happens, right?
For sure.
There's some maturity that needs to be there. But I also think that you should be thinking through the lens of like, oh, God did not give me these things. I don't have this testimony. I haven't went through this thing just for me. It has to be for somebody else. And God will then place people in your life that he entrusts that you can lead. And you have to be able to be willing and open to lead from that place. It might be one person, it might be 20 people, it might be hundreds of people. But I think that there's a responsibility to do that as well. I just don't believe that it's just the thing that's for you. So I think those are probably, when I think about community, I'm thinking through those layers. I'm like, is it people that are, more experienced? Is it some people that have some commonalities to you? And then is it somebody that you can really be intentional to pour into?
Yeah, no, that's bro, you knocked that out the park, because each one of those was such a, and I didn't even want to input in there, but I was like, and know that every, just because a wiser, older person has gems to drop doesn't mean that every gem is created equal. There are a lot of old men who are out here dropping gems that will take you right to the graveyard they're in.
100%. It's not a gem. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It is coal. It is not a diamond.
Yeah, I mean, because we and for some of us, we've been doing that. I mean, like I think about some of the men who've said here, where they're like, I picked up game from all the men that were around me growing up, but I recognize that game took me literally to the dead end that I continue to run into that they didn't tell me about. And so no, I thought all those, that's so that I hope they took note of that, because that truly is a good stepping stone to even, and I don't even think it's just teenagers. I think even grown adults could 100%. Find value in that, in that there comes a time where you need to constantly be seeking community, counsel, people who want to pour into you, or as you said, people that you can pour into. And even when you said about like the discipleship, okay, so I recognize that discipleship comes, as we are all called to be a disciple. I believe that discipleship comes through knowing the Lord. And in order to disciple a person, I think it's fair to say you have to know the Lord. And so that means that there is a process that you were just speaking about 100%. Where you have to get to know him for yourself before you can allow another person to get to know him through you. And so, and when it comes to the process of, like, I think about how, like, okay, we're all called to be disciples. So when will you start the process of knowing what your discipleship looks like from who you are? What do you want to show them? Because either you're going to show them you or you're going to show them him. And if you're showing them you, then they're going to get all of the pain that you've experienced.
Yep.
They're going to experience all of the hurt that you've carried.
Yeah.
They're going to experience the trauma that you say, hey, I'm good, man. Bro, that didn't even bother me.
Yep.
Like, sure it did. That's why you're still carrying it.
Yep.
But I also think that it is so important to recognize that, like, in knowing him now, it's like, okay, you're not, because I deal with this a lot of that, like, man, I don't know the Bible like a lot of other people.
Yep.
And I feel like that's, in a way, it becomes a crutch to say, well, I can't be used this way because I don't know the Bible like a lot of other people.
Yep.
But I think God has let me know that, like, you're worried about what you can do with me instead of letting me do something through you.
100%.
Like, let me speak.
Yep.
Like, you sit back, you pump your brakes. Don't worry about what you do when you don't know. Because if I speak through you, then they'll fully get me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're right. I think I fully believe that's a process that a lot of us would want to go through so that we're not showing up fully as I know some people say, my authentic self. and look, we can go on.
That's a lot. It's a lot there. It's a lot there.
Well, I mean, yeah. But like, how does your authentic self look? Like, have you looked at your full authentic self, the person that you say,
Filthy
well,
rags.
this is just who I am. He said it, but but like, yeah, sometimes you're right. It is. It's filthy, bro. If you were to squeeze water out of you, it would be dirty mop water.
Yeah.
Not because you're a bad person, but because you have just not allowed yourself to begin to be flushed.
Yep.
Flushed out.
Yeah.
And not that who you are is bad, but like what God wants to do in you, he's going to allow who you are, your full authentic self, the one he made you to be. You know, I don't even think I need to use air quotes, because that is exactly who you were made to be.
Yeah.
That's who your authentic self is, but it allows that person to show up in all of those encounters. Yeah. So before we get out of here, what if you were to if you were to be talking to a teen, an adult, I mean, even a guy, even at my age, in my 40s.
Yeah.
And I think we talked a little bit about this before we even started, of like, how can my mess look as good as what you project, of like, yours looks so good, like great father, great husband, a great leader in the church. Like, if you saw where I'm at right now, bro, I could never be you. So why try?
Yeah.
How would your testimony allow them to see that what they're walking through is nothing hard for God to begin to work in?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. And I think that was something that I was urging to do within our conversation, is to bring some balance, because this is not just easy, right? This is not easy to think, oh, I can think big picture. I can have the values and all the things that I spoke about earlier. It's more like, no, this is hard. It's a fight.
Yeah.
Like, it's always a fight. You could look on the surface and say, great husband, great father, church leader. But there's a journey that's happened.
Sure,
you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
To even get there. I know for me, when I think, if I'm looking at teenage Ty, I'm like, yeah, he was insecure. He wasn't super confident in himself, and like really what his identity was. It was wrapped up in, like, I'm a basketball player. Like, that was what it was wrapped up in. It was, man, it's a lot. Like, I'm trying to even think about, like, getting back into that space of how I was feeling. It was a lot of comparison. It was a lot of, like, it was performance based. It was, I do something, therefore I am something, which is a interesting place to live, because then you are a great performer, right? You can do that well, right? I can go and play basketball well. I can get good grades and all of those type of things, and you perform well. So then, therefore, people view you as, oh, he got it all together, he got this, but underneath it's from a place of like insecurity. It's like, I'm trying to be this because, you know what I'm saying, I don't feel like I'm really smart. Like, I don't feel like I'm really a great basketball player. So I have to try to project that out and do whatever it is. And I think that's kind of permeated through my life, where the insecurity really drove a lot of the decisions that I made. I mean, for me, just to share a little bit of like my testimony is like, for me, man, like women was probably a big thing, especially in college. And I think a lot of it was centered around insecurity. I wanted to be the guy that, you know, came in the locker room with the best story, right? Man, this is what happened. This is and it was a lot of that I felt like fueled, you know, my actions. It was like, oh, I wanted to feel like, how am I viewed by my peers? So it drives the actions that I do versus just being like, no, I'm confident in who I am. My dad told me something, and I think it took me a while for me to even like understand what he meant. But he said, I'm trying to get his quote right. It was, you are where the party is what he told me. And I was like, okay, what does that even mean? Like, I don't know what that means. That sounds like some 80s, like 80s baby. And essentially what he was saying was like, he was like, you don't have to run to where everybody else wants to go. You need to be confident in who you are and realize that people will gravitate to you. Yeah. If you are just confident in being who you are. So the party is where you are. It's not where everybody else is. Yeah. And I think that that's helpful to a point. It's helpful to a point. For sure. It's helpful for you to think, okay, I can be confident in who I am. The step further than that is, I'm going to fail. I am not going to, like, my party will get shot up. right. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, my party is not going to last very long. It is going to die. It's going to fail. It will not last. So then it's like, okay, as I've grown, now I'm like, that's helpful as I'm a teenager trying not to fall into the temptations of doing all the things that everybody else is doing. Right. Now as an adult, I think where I'm starting to learn is that I just want to be where he is. And if I can do that, then he will draw things near to me, and it won't be because of who I am. It will be because of who he is. Yeah. So that it becomes less about my performance. Yeah. It becomes less about like what I can do for people, and it's more about people being able to see him in me. Yeah. And if that is if that's the place that I lead from my family, from, you know, being a father, all of those things, and even in my ministry, then I believe that that's the part that I'm like, oh, okay, yes, it's going to, like, God is going to be the one that protects, right? He's going to be the one that, you know, provides in those spaces. He's going to be the one that leads me to all truth. Like, it's going to be him that's going to be the driver versus it having to do anything with me. Yeah. If Ty can get out the way, if Ty's party can get shut down and we can open up Jesus to be a party, as cliche as it could sound, it's like, no, that is the thing that's going to draw the people, right? Yeah. Like the word, the Bible, like who Jesus is, what he did for us on the cross, like that's the thing that draws the people. That's the thing that people get saved from. It don't got nothing to do with me, right? Yeah. And I think when I surrendered that and really made that the focal point of my life, then it's like, okay, yeah, God, you can use me however you want to. Yeah. So if you want me to be in full-time ministry, then I'll go do that. Yeah. Like if you want me to, you know, lead an e-group, yeah, I'll do that. It's whatever you want to do in me. And I get that that's not always an easy reality for people because people have questions. They're like, okay, like, all right, like I get that you like, oh, I can follow Jesus, but yeah, it's hard, right? Like
for sure.
Like I'm addicted to porn. Yeah. That's a real thing. Yeah. So how does God see me when every night I got my cell phone up and I'm going and doing these things, right? Yeah. So it's like, yes, you can 100% feel like I'm not worthy, but he's not calling somebody who's perfect.
Come on.
What he wants to do is he wants to make you perfect.
Yeah.
So if you come with him with that, like I tell teenagers all the time, like, yo, you can pray prayers and talk to God how you need to talk to him. He is not surprised.
Yeah, that's so good.
So I think that the thing that sometimes is like, even when teenagers, like I can call on them at like a youth night to pray, and it's like, oh, I have to feel like I have to have it so polished up, and I gotta, dear Heavenly Father thing, and it has to be this whole like, no, like you're just talking to your Heavenly Father.
Yeah.
And however you want it, like whatever you want to say to him, you make those comments and you do what you do. And I think as you do it more, your prayers will mature.
Yeah.
It will be less you focused and like, God, I just need you to give me a job. God, I just need you to do this. And it's like, no, God, I believe that you're a provider for me.
Yeah.
I believe that you have a purpose for my life. I want to be able to walk in that space. And I get that it's hard to do that as a teenager. I get it's hard to do that as an adult, to say like, oh, I can bring God my porn addiction. I can bring God my insecurity. I can bring God all of these things. I'm a liar. I'm a manipulator. I can bring him those things, and he gonna look at me and feel like I'm straight. Like he's gonna be like, okay, like I can deal with that.
Yeah,
100%. Because I think anybody who has come to Christ has a story.
Yeah, for
that
sure.
He has delivered them from something, because we have all been born into sin. So there's always something that we are dealing with, that nobody came to him perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
So everybody had a blemish. Everybody looked trash.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing is that God sent his son to die on the cross for all of the trash that we did.
Yeah.
I think the greatest thing that we can do is just acknowledge what he did, to follow him. And every day we are thinking through the lens of, how do I pick up my cross? How do I pick up that thing? And how do I walk with purpose?
Yeah.
How do I remember what Jesus did for me? How do I lead from that place? How do I draw people with his name and not mine?
Yeah.
And I think if we can do that, even as a teenager, I'm like, yeah, I don't want any teenager to ever feel like, oh, I'm too young. I can't be used by God. I gotta wait until I'm 35. I gotta get all of my stuff together. I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You literally can just, like, if you just are like, God is the center of all the things that I do. Yes, I'm gonna sin. Yes, I'm gonna do the things, and I'm not saying that that's the way that you live. You're not giving yourself a pass because God is gracious.
Right.
There's a sanctification process that is happening. There's a purging that happens, right?
Yeah.
You start to mature and grow in your faith. But I do think that there has to be a starting place.
For sure.
You have to be able to say, like, I have to make a decision that what I'm doing currently is not what I feel like I want to do. And I gotta put that aside and just say, hey, the action step that I can take is to follow him and figure out where he's gonna lead me. And it could be hard to trust somebody that I'm like, how am I going to trust and follow him? Right? My daddy left, so I feel like I can't trust nobody.
Come on.
Nobody is going to lead me to like anywhere that's good. Right?
Yeah.
But when you break open his word and you realize that all the people that decided to follow, they were led not into the best situations. He didn't say that you were going to go without struggle.
Yeah.
Paul was following Jesus and preaching his gospel, and he ended up in jail.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But God used him even in that place. So I think that at the end of the day, we have to just realize that, oh, if I believe in a God that is good, if I believe that he is a provider, if I believe that he's going to protect me, if I believe these things, then I can follow him even in the spaces that I'm broken, even in the spaces that I don't feel good. And I don't think that that's an easy thing. I think that it's hard. I think that's why you have to have community. I think that's why you have to have some people that have a little bit of wisdom that's like, yo, yes, you are walking through a difficult situation. Yes, your dad has not called you for your birthday in the past 10 years. That's hard. Right? That's a hard reality to face. God. So then you're like, okay, how do I walk? Like, how do I walk this thing out with a father that I can't see, but I'm trusting them. Right? It's hard.
Yeah.
But if you got somebody that's praying for you, if you have some people that are a little bit older, more experienced, that can give you some wisdom, if you have a group of community that are like in the same place, they're dealing with some similar things, you're like, okay, like I got some people that's in this fight with me.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, well, it's not so much about me that I can't give back to somebody else. I can't pour into the next person.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah,
I think that that's the way that God has made us to continue to operate. Is if we decide to do it by ourselves. That's the biggest thing that I feel like. If I look at teenagers right now, I'm like, the enemy is trying to isolate our babies. I think that is the number. I can't say it's the number one, but I feel like if you're thinking about how the enemy is working, I think go to a high school. You're gonna see kids that got hoodies on their heads, headphones in, whether it's AirPods or over the head headphones, and they're on their phone. Well, they are isolated from anybody that's around them. They're like, I don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want to speak to nobody. Don't bother me. I'm in my own zone. I'm listening to whatever music that's permeating my soul. Like, I'm doing all of those things. So the enemy is trying to get, how do I isolate every single one of them in this school? How do I make them feel like everything is about them? How do I make them feel like they're the only ones that are going through this thing, right? And we get into this space where everybody feels isolated and they're just walking. So I go into high school sometimes and I'm like, this might as well be The Walking Dead, because I'm like, all of the students are just sometimes are just walking around, and it's like, I'm not even connected with anything.
Yeah.
I'm just here.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the dangerous place. And I'm like, no, that's why if we go back to like old school, I'm like, yeah, that's why a sports team is very important. That's why jumping into like some form of community, an e-group, it's important to be around other people.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can do it alone. Jesus did not come to this earth. Could he have done it alone? Absolutely. 100%. Why in the world do I go get a bunch of people to be around me, to question what I'm doing,
right,
to not believe, to be messing up my plans and stuff like why do I go and do that? Well, it's because he's modeling, we need people to be around. Yeah. We need to be able to pour into people. I need to be able to hear from my Heavenly Father to be able to make a decision to go to the next thing. So I just think that when I think about teenagers, I think about my own story. I'm like, yeah, there's moments where I felt like it was just me. So the advice that my dad gave, that I'm like, I can be confident because I'm where the party is. Then I'm like, yeah, now it's very me centric. So I have to break that. And I think it's in some terms, it would be like, that's not bad advice. Right. Because what he's trying to do is instill confidence in his son. Right. But then I think where it gets perverted and what the enemy does is like, now it's so me centric that I have to figure out how, and this is what God did, is how do I break that thought where it's not you centric? You need to die to yourself, and you need to start to make me centric. And I think that's the part that I think is helpful. Yeah. God, man, somebody put that mic out, bro. Like, I'm like you just, hey, bro, I don't even know how to follow any of that up. Man, hey, did he come with it? Yeah. Hey, man, hey, but it's crazy because I'm sitting here and I asked Justin if you came with it, because I think you in that everything you just said, you just hit both of us. You hit him, you hit me, and it was real because everything you just said was like so real. Like literally you hit me with something that, yes, I've walked through for a number of years. You definitely hit him. Like, well, I'm talking about, but that's another whole story. But like, sheesh. Yeah, bro. That was, bro, I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that, because there is somebody who literally was just like, hey, he talking about me, bro. He talking about me right now. Like everything he just described is me.
Like, and even down to like your dad gave you great advice for that season. But in the next season, it's almost like that was a shell, like that you said, okay, I've outgrown this shell now. Like I have to go find a bigger shell because this is not the shell that I was supposed to continue to do life with. Great advice, but it just, I wasn't supposed to carry this shell for the rest of my life. And so, man, that was good. That was good.
And I'll say this last thing kind of like about my dad is I'm like, the advice that he gave me was, I think, for that season, but the thing that because my dad is my guy, so I will always big him up because he's my guy. The life that he lived was the example that I needed when I got older to be able to have a framework of how God was breaking me from the advice that he gave me and started to look to the life that he lived.
Ooh,
and I think that was the thing that I'm like, all right, God is breaking me from something, but I don't, like, if God is breaking me from something, do I have an example to point back to? And I think it was helpful for me to see, like, oh, I can go back and look at the life that my dad was living, how he was selfless, how he was somebody who raised his, like, I'm his only child, to raise him up in church and was trying to instill values and morals and principles and things like that. Or I can go back and point back to the life that he was living and say, okay, I have a framework of how to actually like make this a reality. And then God fills in the gap. Yeah. So now it's better than what he was presenting. It's better than what he was doing. It's like, oh, now God was able to take it to a different level. So now the advice that I can give to my son doesn't have to be necessarily what my dad gave me. It's okay, now I can instill confidence in him by being able to use some biblical principles. Right. But where my dad needed to meet me at that point was not necessarily like he met me where it was a place where I could understand that I was going to receive it. And it was the thing that that's what he gave me. And it's nothing wrong, like bad about it.
Sure.
But I do think that it was a way that it was something that I needed for the season, but it wasn't something that I could build my life off of. And I think that now I'm like, okay, how do I give my sons something that they can build their life off of? And from, my oldest son is 4 years old. It's like, my son knows what integrity is. Right. It's doing things it's doing the right thing when nobody is looking. So when I go and tell him, hey, go to the bathroom, he also knows that he needs to go to the bathroom, wash his hands, turn off the light, close his door. Like he just knows that because nobody is going to be looking, but he knows that is the thing that I'm supposed to do. Nobody's looking. Nobody's going to give me credit for it. My dad's not going to say nothing about it, but it's the thing. And he's 4 years old. But I'm like, it has to be constant now where I'm like, I can instill some of those biblical principles in him to hopefully when he gets to a place where he's a teenager, I'm like, those are the things that he is drawing from, that he's leaning on. And that's the confidence that he's able to bring. And hopefully it works. And you continuously as a parent, I mean, my oldest is 4, so I don't know when he's going to look like at 14.
Right.
Probably going to be taller than me.
Right.
But I'm like, I'm going to try to do as best as I can, in that regard, but I'm going to fall short. So I'm like, if God fills in the gap in that place, he's going to have to meet him in his own struggle that he's going to have. And, for sure. I trust that, my God is going to take care of my boys.
No, man. That's good. Shout out Pops, man. Yeah.
Shout out my dad.
Yeah, it's nothing like a father who doesn't just say all the right things, but demonstrates it, showcases
100%.
it in his life.
100%.
That speaks volumes way over words. Bro. This is good, man.
Well, I appreciate
this
you.
This is good, bro. I told Ty before we got started, I was like, hey, man, this might just be your push into podcasting, man. Like, just see how it feels. You be surprised, man. Like, your voice can be used in so many different areas, and sometimes we just see it from a standpoint of like just speaking to people, and sometimes we can miss the people, the youth, or the other people that need to hear our voice or hear our testimony a million miles away that may never be able to sit in front of you. And so I think you just did that today. I think you did that today. So Bro, I appreciate you coming today, man.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. Do you want to share anything with everybody who's listening that may be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area that may want to tap in and just be like, bro, I need my son sitting over up underneath his discipleship or others like him, like or whatever, just your own personal stuff, what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would first off, I would say, I'm the youth director at Elevation Church, University City. So if you're in that area, I would, more than welcome, students, teenagers, middle school, high school, to be able to come and be a part of what God is doing. There's some amazing teenagers that are there, and some amazing leaders that we have. And I'm really, really proud and just grateful and honored to be able to be their leader. So I would say that. And then, I mean, Elevation Church as a whole, I think the youth ministry is really, really powerful. I think we're going in a phenomenal direction. For sure. And I think it's going to be impactful. When we talk about community, I think it creates the community, the teenagers are looking for. Yeah. So I would say that. And then I would also, man, there's so many like great mentoring like programs and stuff like that. I'll shout out my man Terrell McCray, Building Strong Mindsets. That's another mentoring program that I'm a part of as well, that I think is just, they're doing some amazing work. We're really just trying to pour into young teens and boys. So I think that's awesome. And yeah, man, I think that's it, man. I'm just trying to do whatever God wants me to do, in this season. Be a husband to my wife, be a father to my boys, and then, whatever else God has for me, man. I'm open to doing that. So that's where I'm at,
bro.
Man.
Yeah, ain't nothing wrong with that, bro. I think your plate is full, man, and I think God is truly pleased with what you're doing, even in not just saying, okay, well, I think I got this balance, but letting him like work through you to balance it all out in the end. I think that's a beautiful thing when you say, okay, God, I'm trusting you. Like, you've called me to do this, so I know you're going to balance the plates for me. You're going to keep things moving, and you're going to allow me to be exactly where I need to be, doing exactly what I need to do, so that everybody experiences me. And I'm not leaving like holes. And that happens sometimes, but trusting God, as you said earlier, about like, say, God, what am I trusting you for? Sometimes I think it's important as a male, as a father, as a husband, to say, God, I'm trusting that wherever you take me, you're balancing the checkbook to make sure everybody is fully experiencing me. Like, you don't got me over here. My family needs me there. And like, God, you're taking care of all of us. You're protecting all of us. You're providing for all of us. And so I think that's the beauty of just like as you said earlier, just trusting him to do that, knowing that is his identity in our lives. 100%. So, bro, I appreciate this, man. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks all those who listen. Man, this was good. This is good. This is good, bro. I really appreciate you coming. I look forward to future conversations, man. We might have to run this back one day somewhere with some youth, maybe. Who knows? This is good.
And I appreciate you for having me. And creating the space. I think the platform that you have is incredible. Being able to speak into men's lives and anybody that's watching. Might be women that watch as well. So I think that there's definitely there's so much value in this space. So thank you for having me and reaching out. I think that's a true testament to who you are and the mission that you are on right now, to just be able to reach men. So I appreciate you.
Well, no, it was truly a God moment, that how we bumped into each other and just what I was able to share with you.
Oh man.
That just kind of like created like this, like, well, hey, look, you should come and share some of your testimony, some of your story, but just like how what you do, even when you're like, like as I said in the introduction, that was a fail, that was a fumble, but guys, like, but I'm going to use it though. 100%, like 100%. I'm going to use it though. 100%. Like what you consider a fumble, I consider a touchdown. Like that was, you gave up on the play. I was still running the play.
Man, I think about that moment, often, and can bring your audience into it. I don't mind. I think I'm good with being vulnerable. But having the opportunity to speak in front of a good sized room, and honestly, really, going up there without notes, and really relying on my brain to do the work, and I forgot a little part of my content. And it was a moment that felt like it was embarrassing and all of the things, and I really was wrestling and having to fight a lot of thoughts of like, oh man, like you suck as a communicator, like you're no good, you shouldn't have did this, all of those type of things, like you didn't work hard enough, like all of those type of things that really was lies from the enemy. And man, you shared something with me that I've screenshotted and really took with me, because I think moments like that, when you're vulnerable and open and just having to be in a moment, and sometimes the moments that you have to be in, embarrassment, they suck.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You pray to God that you don't have to go through those moments, but when you are on the other side of it, you're able to look into it. And one of the things you shared was one of the young men that you mentor, said that it was good to be able to see somebody stumble but not fall. And that was helpful for me, being able to read that a couple of days after that, because the very next day I had to get on that same stage, and I had to go up, and with all of the insecurities, things that was flooding, it was pieces of encouragement that I was getting that was extremely helpful, to realize that I'm not defined by a moment, but that God wants to use everything, even my embarrassment. He wants to use it to be able to help somebody else. And that was the perspective that I needed to be able to fight what the enemy was constantly trying to put in my head. I was telling my wife that same night, I said, he said, how are you doing? Because she was in the audience, and we had a moment. She was like, how are you doing? And I was like, I'm fighting. There's a thought that comes in every second, and I have to figure out how to fight and replace it with another one. And I'm writing right now, and I'm journaling, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be, a struggle for me. But I have to fight. If I succumb to it, then I will become the culmination of all of those different thoughts. Sure. So I thought that, what you shared was just extremely helpful, for me, because, the young man that, I'm still praying for, because he's blessed me, that I think that it's a priority that I need to pray for him. You was able to shed some light on that, and I really appreciate it. Help that moment be beyond that moment. It's something that I carry with me, throughout my life. So thank you.
No, bro. I after hearing, it was my pleasure. But after hearing that, I was like, there's no way, even though I don't really know him like that, there's no way I can't share that with him, because I don't know what battle he's in right now because of that. And the fact that this is what his perspective was, how he saw it, it's like, oh wow. So you mean to tell me you've never seen somebody stumble and get back up? You've normally just fallen down in your stumbles? Sheesh.
Man.
Like that, it was heavy.
It was crazy.
Yeah. But bro, I appreciate you getting back up there, and I look forward to you getting back up there again. Cause I know that if he could work through you in that way that time, I can't wait to see what he's gonna do through you. And let's just throw it out there. 2025, Youth X 2025. I mean, like, I don't know.
That's God's plan.
You're right. You are exactly right. And I think that's the beauty of God, is that he is preparing us even in the low moments and the high moments. We love God in the high moments. But I think we find a way to say, you knew that, guy. You knew that, like, I needed. You could have warned me, though. You could have let me know that.
Little something. Give me something.
Bro, thank you again, man. This is awesome. Well, y'all, hey, listen, I'm glad we fully got that story out, because I was like, well, I don't know, but man, that's what put this all together. It allowed me to be able to bump into you that day and just be like, you were like, you're Robert Moore. And I was like, yeah. And it was like, so I'm glad that all happened. I'm glad I was able to come over there and catch up with you. But hey, look, I thank y'all for joining us. Thank y'all for sitting with us. Thank you for spending time with us. You guys, be blessed. All right. Talk to you soon.
Peace.
And that wraps up another episode of God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. I'm Justin Moore, and we want to give a huge thank you to all of you for tuning in and being part of our community. Your support means the world to us, and we hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as we did. If what you heard resonated with you, please consider subscribing and leaving a review on today's video. It really helps us reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to connect with us on social media at God's Glory and Men's Real Stories for updates, new episode clips, and to share your thoughts on today's episode. We love hearing from you. If this conversation happened to shed a light on past experiences of yours that may have been happy moments or maybe hurtful moments, feel free to keep the conversation going in the comments below, so as a community we can listen, pray with you, or point you to helpful resources. Join us next time for another great episode, and until then, let's give God the glory for all He's doing in our stories.